Okay, boys and girls, we've been talking about surface area of prisms, which is like everything that you can touch right here. Now we're going to start talking about volume of prisms, which is actually what will fit inside our shape. So as we start talking about volume, we're going to use a different formula. And as we're talking about what would fit inside our shape, I'm going to take my net out just so you can kind of see. Okay, volume is how much, like for example, if we're talking about unit cubes, it would be how many of these could actually fit inside this space. That would be the volume of this prism. Okay, our lesson today is going to talk about different sized unit cubes. Okay, a full-sized unit cube, which would be like this, or unit cubes that are smaller, such as this one. Okay, obviously, boys and girls, if I'm putting something in this size, it's going to take fewer to fill it up than if I'm putting in something that is that size. Okay, if I'm putting something in it that's this size, it's going to take a heck of a lot of these put inside there to fill it up, right? Okay, so let's just think about that for a minute. Okay, how many of these half-inch unit cubes would it take to make a whole 1-inch cube? Okay, I want you to think about that. So here's a half-inch unit cube. Here's a 1-inch unit cube. Think about how many it's going to take to fill that up. Okay, oftentimes students will say it takes 4 of them. Okay, so I'm going to set out 4 here. And what do you notice? Is that going to make a whole unit cube? Okay, it actually doesn't, does it? Okay, it makes half of one layer of a whole unit cube. So if we're talking about half-inch unit cubes, it actually takes 8 half-inch unit cubes to make a whole 1-inch cube. And that's going to be important to remember as you do your lesson today. Okay, now let's talk about the formula for finding volume. Okay, so on 11.5, boys and girls, this is just kind of what I've just barely talked to you about. Okay, it says a jewelry box has a length of 3.5, a width of 1.5 units, and a height of 2 units. Okay, so 3.5 by 1.5 by 2. Okay, what is the volume of the box in cubic units? Okay, and then on part A, it says you're not actually using whole unit cubes, you're actually using half unit cubes. And it kind of shows you what I just barely showed you. Okay, so if this purple box is a unit cube, and we were to put half unit cubes in there, it would take 8 of those half unit cubes to fill this whole 1 unit. Okay, it says each of the cubes in the activity has a side length of a half unit. How many cubes with a side length of half does it take to form a unit cube? Well, the answer there is going to be 8. It takes 8 of those. And that's going to be important to remember in a minute. It says, so each smaller cube represents 1/8 of a unit cube. So this smaller cube right here would be 1/8 of the whole thing. Okay? And then it goes on to say, boys and girls, it goes on to give you an activity of what it is that you can do. It says, cut out the net, then fold and tape it into a rectangular prism. Leave one face open so you can pack the prism with cubes, and then actually do it. And it wants to know how many cubes with a side length of half does it take to fill the prism. And it's talking about this one up here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to cut it out and do all of that. That would take too much time for this video. But what I'm going to do is show you mathematically how to figure it out. Okay, so the formula for volume is volume equals length times width times height. Okay, and it told me, boys and girls, that it had a length of 3.5 times 1.5 times 2. Okay, and that's assuming you're using actual 1-inch cubes, 1 unit cubes, not a part of a unit cube. Okay, so that's when we would use that formula. And then we just multiply those together and it would tell us what the volume is. Okay, so 3.5 times 1.5 times 2. So 3.5 times 1.5 times 2. That's 10.5. Now, that's assuming, boys and girls, that you're using a cube to fill up that box that is this size, this purple box's size. Okay, but in our demonstration, or our question, it asks us, how many cubes with the side length 1/2 does it take to fill the prism? Okay, so if it takes 8 of these 1/2 unit cubes, we have to take our answer, boys and girls, and we have to times it by 8 because we're going to use a lot more than that. A lot more. It will take a lot more of this peachy color than it would take the purple color to fill that up. Okay, so we have 10.5 and we're going to times that by 8. Okay, so altogether it's going to take, how many cubes with a side length 1/2 does it take to fill the prism? It's going to take 84, that size. And then if we want to know, well, actually how many unit cubes would it take? That's actually this value right here that we found over here using the formula. That's 10.5. So if we take that 84 and we divided it again by 8, that would be 10.5 unit cubes. So the volume of the jewelry box is 10.5 cubic units.